Coming to you, pre-recorded from Casa de Regis in Culver City, California, it's the Reggie N Regis Podcast!
Coming from Culver City, Los Angeles, my name is Reggie Bobrin. This is my co-host, Tim Regis. Today, we will be talking sports, and not just predominantly one sport, but all four sports in general. We're going to talk about the NFL carousel QB. We're going to be talking about baseball's cheating scandal, and we will be talking about Zion's impact and the NCAA tournament. Tim.
Well, we're talking about appropriate topics here today because what we want this podcast to be is to be timely, relevant to whatever's going on in the world of sports, right? And let's face it, normally February and March aren't exactly the most exciting times of the year. You know, it's not October when you have all four major sports in college football. You know, it's not, April when the draft's going on. It's not NFL training camp or anything like that. But it turns out that this year, February and March are giving us plenty of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, a lot of scandals, a lot of different things going on as far as obviously over the winter with the cheating scandal and obviously free agency coming up in the NFL. I mean, it's not quite as crazy as it was last year, but we have some big names that are basically moving on. Brady, potentially, I should say. We know Rivers is moving on. We know Brady. It's up in the air right now. We never know with the Patriots what's going to actually happen, And then we have a couple of the guys, some names being thrown on, Garoppolo, perhaps, Winston, Mariota. To think like both guys were 1 and 2 in their respective draft class.
Only 5 years ago.
Yeah, only 5 years ago. And both teams are kind of like, well, we know Tennessee's moved on from Mariota. Yeah. And now Jameis is kind of like, so we'll be touching on that. And we also have Andy Dalton. So we'll be touching on that as like first and foremost. But we'll also, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the cheating scandal. Obviously, something that's rocked the sports world. I don't think we've really ever seen anything like this.
Not in our lifetimes, at least.
Not in our lifetime, as far as just, I guess you kind of know what the deal is regarding that. But we're going to touch on that as well. And Zion's impact. Zion's one of those rare figures who's kind of come into sports. I'm trying to remember. Maybe Shaquille O'Neal was the last, or maybe LeBron. Actually, LeBron was a guy that just had so much hype, and then you hear at the beginning of the season that he's not going to play till midseason, and it's like, okay, it's going to probably take him a full or the rest of the year to kind of like get in any kind of game shape. But surprisingly, has been very impactful. I mean.
Exactly. It's making the Western Conference playoff race look very, very interesting.
Yeah. And then we're also going to touch on, it is that time of the year. It is March. So we're going to touch on the NCAA tournament, potential not upsets, but number one seeds. I guess my whole thing with the NCAA is probably the most uneventful season that I've ever seen. I mean, there's really...
I've seen virtually no media coverage of it by the major networks.
Yeah,
it's really been downplayed.
You think a lot of the blue bloods. I mean, Kansas is number one, but you see teams like Baylor.
Baylor's always been decent. It's just
but not like a top 5 team.
They're not a Duke or a Carolina or anything like that. And you got San Diego State coming in.
Yeah, there. San Diego State was undefeated up until a few weeks ago, and it's just kind of like what like. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I know it's just different. So
yeah, this is a very different year for college basketball, which either means this tournament is either going to be a complete dud or it's going to be the most exciting stuff we've seen in years.
Yeah, fair enough. And I guess in its own right, that's pretty exciting in itself. So it should shape up for a pretty exciting NCAA tournament and Final Four. So we're going to touch on all 4 of those things. And yeah, so I guess with that being said, we'll start with the NFL. We'll start with the king itself.
Yeah, well, to your point you mentioned a second ago, is like you thought NFL free agency wasn't as crazy as last year. You have to remember at this point last year, the league year deadline was a little bit earlier in the year. Like this year was pushed back a week. And a lot of the deals that had been made were made before the league year technically began, right? The most notable of those being the Odell Beckham trade and, Le'Veon Bell signing with the Jets, which ended up being completely inconsequential. and more of your flashy skill position players rather than the quarterbacks who are faces of the franchise.
Yeah, true indeed. I think this year, though, might actually turn out to be more interesting. Is that the word to say? I mean, you see like the bigger name. I mean, obviously Tom Brady being the biggest domino of the group. I mean, imagine him actually leaving the Patriots.
Can you see him in another uniform, honestly? Like just as a visual, not so much in terms of actual matchup between, coaching staff and his abilities. Can you see him in another uniform?
Look, in my lifetime, I saw Joe Montana in a different uniform.
So did I.
Okay. I've seen Brett Favre in a different uniform. I've seen Peyton Manning in a different uniform. Nothing surprises me anymore. But
Brady?
Yeah, but think about it. This is the Patriots. I mean, they've let guys go who actually wanted to be there and basically told them, okay, it's your time to go. I mean, truth be told, 2-3 years ago, had Belichick gotten his way, Brady wouldn't have been out the door.
Exactly. It's because Jimmy G would be
exactly
his quarterback now.
Porn star Jimmy. Shout out to Stephen A. But with that being said, that's the biggest domino. We know Rivers is moving on. We see a few other big names, Winston, Mariota.
Yeah, I mean, how crazy is it that, like we said, top two guys from their draft class heralded as the futures of their franchise 5 years later. I mean, let's face it, they're not going to be the quarterbacks of those teams in 2 or 3 years.
Well, Winston we don't know about. Mariota, yes. Winston's always, he's like the biggest enigma I've ever seen because he's productive, but he just isn't a winner. Does that make any sense?
Exactly. He'll have a game where he throws 5 touchdowns for 400 yards and will lead you to a 3-score victory. And then the next week he'll throw 6 interceptions against a team that ends up going 6-10.
Yeah, exactly.
You never know what you're going to get from him.
Exactly. He was responsible for 29 turnovers for his team last year, which is unacceptable on any level, especially the most important position on a football team. Let's be honest. So, but he did throw for 5,000 yards as well and 30 touchdowns. The biggest thing about Jameis Winston that's always caught my attention is the lack of intangibles. He's just, he's talented, but he's not a winner.
Well, you also have to remember the quarterback is really kind of the leader of the locker room. Now, granted, you might have other guys that might be able to do that. New England, for example, had a lot of those defensive veterans when Brady was coming up. But a lot of times, your starting quarterback has to be a guy that everyone else in the locker room can rally around. And look at Jameis Winston's history. You think that's somebody that guys are going to want to bet their career on?
Honestly, if he was leading them to wins, I don't really think anything in his past would matter anymore. I mean,
oh yeah, if they were 12-4, nobody would care.
Exactly. But the fact that they're not, I don't even know if they're 500. They're probably a little bit below that. But it's just the fact that he's never gradually progressed into that guy. And it usually with a quarterback, you'll see that in the great ones. You'll see that in year 2.
We saw that the last couple of years with Mahomes and Lamar Jackson.
Well, yeah. I mean, technically Mahomes' first season was his MVP year. But, I mean, you could argue about that,
sure.
Just like whatever. But I've just never seen that kind of winner mentality. And, again, you do see that. Look at guys like Matt Ryan, even Phillip Rivers, a guy who we're going to talk about, later, obviously. Yeah. But it's just one of those things that's it's oh, man. I can't even come up with the word. It's just like
it's baffling.
Yeah. I don't know. And then they brought in Bruce Arians. I always drop that name. I don't know why. Bruce Arians, who's the quarterback whisperer. And it just seemed like Jameis somewhat regressed a little bit more. I mean, he probably had more turnovers with Bruce
Arians.
There we go. Than he's ever had. But then, I don't know. He's just an enigma to me.
You have to remember, coming out of school, we saw his Heisman year in 2013,
right? When
he led Florida State to a national title, and let's face it, they were the unquestioned best team that year. And then he comes back the next year. They get smoked in the playoff by Oregon. largely having to do with the fact that the team just basically quit in the fourth quarter.
Pretty much, yeah. They were overmatched. I remember watching that, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can do a whole other episode on that just because I think Florida State shouldn't have even been in the playoff anyway. But then he comes out. He gets drafted number 1 sheerly because of his, upside talent, right? Mm-hmm. We're in an era of quarterbacks in 2015 where, we view Aaron Rodgers as the end-all, be-all.
Right.
And, his arm talent and everything. So they think it's like, oh, he's young, he's immature, we can work through all that. Now it's 5 years later. We haven't worked through any of that. Exactly.
And again, as I was alluding to earlier, those are things that you see. Those are qualities, intangibles that you see in their second year, in their third year. Put it this way, a franchise QB never sees that 5th year. You think Patrick Mahomes, for 1 second, is going to see the end of that 5th year. They're going to have a contract done with him by sometime next season.
Oh, easily. And he'll be the highest paid player in the league, and rightfully so.
By far. Yeah. And which brings us to Mr. Marcus Mariota. Mariota is somebody,
he just never figured it out.
Yeah, I don't know if it was coaching. I don't know if he has that classic kind of Brady Quinn gene in him where it's just like it's check down, and for a guy who, I mean, obviously he has some ability. I mean, he can move. He has a decent arm. I've seen him throw the ball down the field a few times, but those again.
But you also have to remember the way the Titans organization kind of always has been. Who is the last great wide receiver the Tennessee Titans have had? Kevin Dyson?
Not Kevin Dyson. That was Mason.
Oh, Derek Mason. Yeah.
Derek Mason. Derek Mason was
he was pretty good for them.
Yeah.
No, but they've always had good tight ends with Delaney Walker and going back to Frank Wycheck. They've always had good running backs. Mm-hmm. Quarterback, like having a number 1 wide receiver has never been a big part of that system, no matter who was the coach. And they've gone through a lot of coaches.
Well, I mean, they had Jeff Fisher for a number of years. And then who was the
Mike Munchak.
Mike Munchak.
And then I think Mike Mularkey was there. Was it Mike Mularkey who was there when he got drafted?
Mike Mularkey. Cut the Mularkey. But and I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Of course, you have to. I would too. But then and Vrabel's there now. So
and Vrabel strikes me as, although with Tannehill, I mean, they threw it a little bit more. That kind of confuses me how Ryan Tannehill can step in and do what he did, and Mariota couldn't. I mean, they're pretty much the same kind of caliber of QB.
Yeah, but Mariota's game is more mobile. At least coming out of Oregon, it was.
I don't know. It's just kind of like that. Like,
let's go to the question that I think everyone would ask with us talking about him. Like, where do you see him ending up?
Chicago Bears.
You think he goes to Chicago?
Yeah.
See, I think Cam ends up there.
Really?
Yeah. Because let's face it, you think the Mitch Trubisky experiment's going to succeed?
No.
Oh, I don't think so either.
Oh, no. I could have told you that last year.
Yeah. I could have told you that in 2017. But yeah, I think Cam ends up there, ends up changing how defenses approach that offense, right? Because Chicago's got to be in kind of like a win now mode with all the talent they have and all the guys they're going to have.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when they made that Khalil Mack trade, it was just kind of like, it was a given that they were like pushing everything forward. They obviously have the skill set around them to make some kind of run, whether it's a playoff, maybe not Super Bowl, but they can make a playoff run. But that's interesting. I haven't really thought too much about Cam. I still don't buy the fact that they're going to let him go. I don't see that happening.
Unless the Panthers go in full tank mode. They lost Olsen.
Trevor Lawrence coming out next year.
Exactly.
I can see that happening.
They lost Greg Olsen. They lost Luke Kuechly. If they lose Cam, who's the backup they had last year? Not Will Greer, who they drafted, the other kid. Kyle Allen. Yeah.
Oh, he took over, actually. And there was a little bit of a Ryan, Minshew magic. It's just like everybody's
that was Jacksonville.
No, I know, but I'm saying. But there was kind of like, I think we found our guy of the future. And it's just like, no, not really. I remember when Minshew's first few games, it was just like, we've got our guy. And it's just like, no, it's not.
So if you remember in 2010, right, the Panthers were in full tank mode with Jimmy Clausen as their quarterback. You remember him? The little kid out of Notre Dame who everybody kind of knew was going to be nothing and was.
The guy who was supposed to be the best high school QB coming into college and
basically just
forever.
It's basically just completely, shat the bed throughout his college career.
Pretty much, yeah.
But that let them get the number 1 pick to take camp.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's maybe a little bit too early to tell as far as how everything's going to play out. But it's just weird. I mean, if you would have told me in 2015, both Mariota and Winston wouldn't even be on the same teams that drafted them, I would have just been like, at least one of them. I could see one staying with them and then the other kind of busting out. But both of them are just basically like, well, didn't work out. And they both had 5 years to prove themselves.
And if we go back to 2015, if you would have told me that, there's a possibility that Cam Newton might be getting shopped by the Panthers 5 years later, 5 years after he wins the MVP and takes them to a Super Bowl with a 15-1 year. I mean, I know the NFL has always been not for long, but you think a guy like that's going to at least hold up a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, he's still young. I mean, what is he, like 31?
I want to about 31.
Oh, okay. Well, here's another guy from actually Cam Newton's draft class, Andy Dalton.
Oh, that's right. They were in the same draft class.
Yeah, the red-headed rifle. And I guess we pretty much figured out what he's about. And I guess the Bengals pretty much figured out what he's about as well. So he will become a free agent, right?
I believe he's. I think he has one more year left.
One more year left?
I think so.
Well, he won't be playing for the Bengals.
He won't be playing for the Bengals.
That I can guarantee you. Where do you think he ends up? I'm thinking New England. I heard New England.
I've heard New England as well.
Which would be very interesting just because of the fact of...
But here's the thing, though. The way New England is currently built is kind of like the way Cincinnati was built the last few years he was there. A complete lack of weapons.
Right. And at least he has an AJ Green to throw to, if anything. I mean,
because what does he have in New England? Julian Edelman?
Yeah.
I mean, he has Mohamed Sanu, who he worked with in Cincinnati.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
Would help. But even then, though, like, their line's not all that great. They only have one good lineman in Tunney.
Right. I mean, they have to do a complete overhaul in this draft somehow. I mean, they have to get some kind of impact player on offense.
Exactly.
Their defense is still legit.
Yeah.
But
and Stephon Gilmore just won Defensive Player of the Year.
Exactly. I mean, and they really have to find some kind of playmaker. I mean, that's apparent. Where and how, we don't know. But that would be pretty baffling if he goes to New England, just because I don't know what he'll bring.
The question is, who needs a good, solid backup for somebody who might be young and developing?
Pretty much. I mean, Miami already has Fitzpatrick, who they've committed to.
Which leads to the other possibility that I think happens.
Which?
I think Cincinnati brings him back for one more year for Joe Burrow to learn under. Now, the question of who the week 1 starter is remains to be seen.
Right.
But you have somebody in the building, who knows the ownership, and let's face it, Cincinnati is about as dysfunctional of an ownership and front office as you get in the NFL.
Pretty much. It's always been like that, though. I mean,
but I'm saying you have somebody who knows it, and they're bringing Zach Taylor back for a year or two, knows the coaching staff. So if your future is Joe Burrow, who better to show him the ropes than somebody who's already in the building?
Fair enough. I guess we'll see how that plays out. But since we are talking about the quarterback carousel, let's talk about the two big names, Brady and Rivers.
Yeah.
First off with Phillip Rivers, just because the fact that we know he is not coming back to the, it almost sounds weird to say, the LA Chargers. I've heard Tampa.
Him and Arians, I think, would make a good combo. Because Rivers has always been like air and out kind of guy. They have a Mike Evans who's very comparable to a Keenan Allen, his skill set.
Right.
The question is, like, do they have a good running back though? Like, what's the running back situation there?
Oh, jeez.
How long's Doug Martin been in the league? Is he even still on the team?
He's not on the team. The muscle hamster. No. Who is their running back? We'll have to look that one up.
But you have to remember the Chargers had, not only Melvin Gordon, who is looked at as one of the elite running backs in the league, but Austin Eckler, who really broke out last year,
Right.
who just signed a $24 million extension.
Right, in place of Melvin Gordon when Melvin Gordon was holding out for his contract. That'll be pretty interesting. But, I mean, Rivers, apparently he moved his family to Florida, so he has connections there. So it'll be interesting where he goes. I've heard the Colts
I've heard the Colts as well.
I see that as a good fit.
Well, they've got a great offensive line. They've got a good tight end. They can keep him protected. And let's face it, Rivers has been beaten up quite a bit throughout his, 16-year career.
Has it been 16?
It has been 16 years.
16.
He was the same draft class as Eli and Ben.
And Big Ben, yeah. So we'll see how that plays out. But I guess we'll get to the biggest name of them all. And it's one Mr. Thomas Edward Patrick Michael Brady. He's got one of those weird long names.
Michael's not in there, but you had everything else right.
Okay, Michael. Maybe I was thinking of somebody else. But Mr. Tom Brady. You hear stories and sources and things and just back and forth. He's going back to New England and he's going to L.A. and he's going to Tennessee. And it's just like we really don't know what the hell to believe.
How many people do you think have been hired to be on plane watch for Tom Brady? You remember when that happened with LeBron?
Plane watch.
Plane watch.
Oh, when he was a free agent?
When he was a free agent. Like, they would keep track of what flights he was on going where, hoping that would uncover some clues to reveal where he was going.
You know what's funny? I remember the night of the infamous decision. He was actually in Connecticut.
Yep.
So everyone in New York was like, oh, he's coming to us. It's just like, I know. I was actually in Miami at that time. I'm thinking, oh, he might go to the Knicks, but I heard he's going to Miami. Anyway, not to get too far off the topic. But plane watch, I mean, do you think they're doing that for a 43-year-old Tom Brady?
You have to remember, this guy is not just an NFL star and not just, the quarterback who's won the most Super Bowl rings of anybody. This guy's a pop culture star, right?
Yeah, I mean,
his wife has made more money than he has.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that's been noted.
Anybody who even has an inkling of what's going on in the NFL knows that Tom Brady and the New England Patriots have gone together like, white and rice.
Right. But, I mean, he's 43 years old. I mean, look, did he regress somewhat? Part of that is probably because he had nobody to throw to. They still won.
No, but he definitely regressed last year.
Yeah, they still won 12 games. What do you think is a good fit for him? Because you hear like 3 or 4 teams. I mean, now this week you're hearing San Francisco. I'm like,
okay. First off, the San Francisco trade idea that has been proposed out there, and for those of you out there who haven't heard it, some people are proposing that Brady and Garoppolo be traded with some pick compensation somewhere in there, so that Brady can play for the 49ers and Garoppolo can go back to the Patriots.
So
why in the heck would the 49ers do this?
Well, apparently Kyle Shanahan is not too happy with Jimmy G. I mean, in a sense of trust level. Now, we all know the NFL is a game, and the Patriots are not the program or the organization that you want to use. Normally, teams are not supposed to be that good for that amount of time. There's a short window. So I guess with all the guys that they have under contract, under their rookie contracts, or especially that massive defensive line, he wants to win now. He knows that window. We're going to have to start paying these guys at some point. Can we pay them all? What's going to happen? So do you want a proven winner? I mean, it's very telling. And even though, Garoppolo got him there, what did he throw, 7 passes in the NFC Championship game?
When you have a 3-headed running back monster, you can get away with that.
But, look, again, I'm not in the 49er building. There are some kind of rumblings that Kyle Shanahan is kind of like, we don't know if he's not sure about Garoppolo.
Okay, but if you pull the trigger on this, what do you do after Brady? And what do you do if Brady falls apart this year?
Gotcha. I'm not saying that I would make that trade. I wouldn't. But the fact that you're hearing that is a bit surprising.
It is.
Kind of like that. I could see my point of view from this. I see Brady going back to New England. I just don't see what he has, what kind of gain that he has leaving.
I can see one place, though.
Tennessee?
The Chargers.
Yeah.
He has property in L.A.
Mm-hmm.
Giselle would definitely not have a problem being out here.
Right.
And also, the Chargers are moving into the new stadium with the Rams. And from what I hear, the business agreement behind that, the Chargers are not really selling very many tickets at all for that place.
Well, we live here. We know.
Exactly. Yeah, we're trying to make it apparent to our audience. Yeah, the
Right.
Chargers have no nexus in LA whatsoever.
Okay.
They're maybe the 10th most popular team here, and that's behind 2 soccer teams, women's basketball, men's curling, and a whole bunch of others we haven't thought of.
Right. And, I mean, I could see the Titans. If I had to place a bet, I could see him going there just because of the connection with Vrabel, just because from an offensive standpoint, they have this monster of a running back. They have this great offensive line. And, I mean, it just makes sense if he wants to win,
Exactly.
to go there. But that's the only thing. If gun to my head, I say he goes back to New England.
I agree. I think he ends up back there too.
And when is free agency starting again?
Free agency starts on March 18th. That is the first official day of the new league year. Now, granted, there can be things that will leak prior to that, as we've heard with a couple trades so far involving some lesser names.
Right.
But yeah, March 18th is when the official league year opens.
Okay. So I guess we'll find out in the next week and a half or so what's going to happen. I'm pretty sure we will probably hear a lot more sources.
And there's going to be some stuff that comes completely out of left field.
Exactly. And we'll just have to see how that plays out. But those were the big names that we just mentioned: Brady, Rivers, Garoppolo, Winston, Mariota, and Dalton. And
With a little bit of Cam thrown in there.
a little bit of Camp thrown in there. And we'll see how that ends up.
But of course, that's not going to affect football until September.
Exactly.
Right? And we're just going to be speculating.
Exactly.
We have another sport on our hands where the immediate effects of what's going on in its world we're going to see in the next few weeks, and that is the world of baseball.
Okay. And just in case you've been under a rock for the past, 3 months or so, we do have a certain scandal. And there's always a beautiful, juicy baseball scandal. We had steroids, and we had what? We had what was the other scandal that we had?
We had the baseball strike a couple decades ago.
Oh yeah, the '94. But this one is something I've never, and I've been generally a baseball fan for 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen it. Not just the way. I'm sure it's happened in some way or form as far as stealing signs. That's probably goes back generations. But not this particular way. And just to see how much, what's kind of started out as a minor kind of spark has just ignited into a massive fire. And it's just been handled so poorly just by everybody involved. I mean, it's baffling. I mean, Tim, have you ever seen anything like this?
Not in my lifetime.
Right.
Like the biggest scandal I can think of prior to this would have been, the 1920 Black Sox, which that was long before us or anybody listening to this podcast was born.
Say it ain't so, Joe.
But the thing is, like, this game is designed to be so simple, right?
Right.
It's a dude throwing a ball to another dude and a guy with a stick trying to hit it off him.
Right.
And if there's one thing that you and I have both been told, it's that the hardest thing to do in sports
Hit
is
a
to hit a
baseball.
100-mile-an-hour baseball.
Exactly.
So my initial thinking is, if there's sign stealing, right, that shouldn't really affect things all that much. But, there are people whose careers have been affected by this.
Right. And think about the ramifications. Like, Beltran loses his job with the Mets.
Alex Cora with the Red Sox.
And he was a World Series winning manager.
And so was AJ Hinch.
And there was just a lot of trickle effects from just this scandal, just alone. But what I want to focus on is just how poorly the Astros have handled this. I mean, my God, the funny thing, when they had their, I guess, initial press conference discussing the whole thing, they had time to really kind of figure out. And, the PR spin of just like, oh, well, this is what we're going to say and this is what we're going to be. And
Yeah, and it wasn't like they only had like 6 hours to come up with something and
Exactly.
everything all like broke at one time. Like this developed over a period of time, and this investigation was going on for at least a year and a half.
Exactly. And I've never seen something that was coming. Like if I know, oh man, the hammer's gonna drop. Okay, how do I spin this? What can I do? And it just completely dropped the ball, and just continue to drop the ball. I think it starts with the ownership.
Thank you.
Okay,
And now, granted, it was being done by some of the players. The managers and the coaches knew about it, but did nothing.
Right.
But then ownership could have put a squash to it. And even after it was discovered, even after the outrage came out, they could have done something to save face. But unfortunately, Astros owner Jim Crane only did something to fuel the fire. And I believe we have an audio clip.
Yeah. This is Astros owner Jim Crane when asked about how or what the ramifications of the cheating scandal.
Few comments out there. Our opinion is that this didn't impact the game. We had a good team. We won the World Series, and we'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you for that, Jim.
Yeah, it didn't impact the game? Really? Ask Yankee fans if they thought it impacted the game.
Exactly.
Ask Dodger fans if they impacted the game. Or
Right.
ask that guy, I forget the pitcher's name, who brought the lawsuit in court, who, even if he gets any money out of it, he says he's donating it to charity, who can't get a job with an MLB team now because his ERA was spiked because he gave up 7 runs in a third of an inning when he was with the Blue Jays and he played the Astros.
Right. But according to Jimmy, there was no effects whatsoever. I mean, I just look at this just from the aspect of and that was just certainly one soundbite from one particular individual. If you just seen the interviews with Altuve and was Brigman and just Carlos Carrera is the only one that sounded anything remorseful. He's the only person that sounded anything just like, what we did was completely and utterly effed up.
Yeah.
Everybody else is just kind of like, well, and this is the kind of the worst thing I hate when somebody's in the wrong, and just from personal experiences when they say, well, it happened, let's just move on. I mean, if there's anything that just enrages me just 100 just ever, is it when somebody's just like, okay, well.
And they don't even acknowledge they're going to try to do anything about it. Like, okay, so let's go to a hypothetical here, right?
Go ahead.
Because one of the things we wanted to hit on in this discussion is how is this going to affect the Astros 2020 season, right? We've all heard about, the over-under of how many people are, or how many Astros batters are going to be hit by pitches this year. Right. By the way, it's 83.5. I'm taking the over. And if a gambling company wants to sponsor me on this and make their money back, I will take your money to Vegas right now.
Sponsor us. Fucking selfish bastard. Anyway.
That's a thing that's going to come running through on our show.
Right. Think about the ramifications. Just that alone of how many guys are going to get just tagged. Also, fan reaction. We've got a good glimpse of it in spring training. Obviously, Major League ballparks are just completely different. You wonder how other teams are going to react. Just not just from pitching and batting, but just how are they going to treat these players? I heard Stephen A. Smith a couple weeks ago said the best way to get them back is not to hit their players, just turn your back to them. Just don't even give them that respect.
Exactly, which begs another question.
Right.
There will be teams out there who maybe might struggle to sell tickets who will be playing the Astros this year and might use the cheating scandal as an opportunity for a promo.
Why not?
You think the Detroit Tigers aren't going to do free trash can night?
And it'll probably be a massive hit. But
I'd go to that if I was in Detroit.
Why would you ever want to be in Detroit, number one?
I've been there and I can concur. Sorry to our listeners in Detroit.
Oh, sorry, our listeners in Detroit. I'm typical arrogant New York guy. It's just New York and a little bit of Miami. So you know me. I like
and Ohio over here. So the
Ohio
whole state
over
of Michigan is irrelevant to me.
I was gonna say Cleveland, but we'll leave that alone.
Cincinnati. I claim the whole state.
So we're obviously what spring training is going to be over in the next week and a half, 2 weeks.
Week and a half, yeah.
Okay, so it's going to be very interesting to follow to see what unfolds in the Astro scandal. I think we pretty much all can expect a lot of booing, a lot of hit batters, a lot of just overall resentment, which is deserved, but. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what really transpires as far as this whole scandal. But it's not going away anytime soon.
Well, I think most of it will be early in the season. Of course, that 4-gamer with the Yankees in September in Yankee Stadium. I'm grabbing my popcorn for that one.
Only in September? I'm like,
yeah, you got to wait 6 more months, man. I'm sorry.
Christ. I mean, by then football will be starting, so I don't know.
I don't think anyone will care.
I don't think anybody will give a rat's ass. But, yeah, I mean, so just let us know on email what you think of the Astro scandal, what you think of owner Jim Crane and his comments. If you want, actually, what do you think are some good odds as far as batters getting hit? And then we'll read some of those over to you and see what your opinions are of those things. But yeah, so it's so far we this kind of February and March hasn't been dull.
Well, we do have a rookie in the NBA right now who came in with probably the most hype of anybody in at least 15 years, and now finally we've gotten a chance to look at him, and he's living up to it.
Gee, I wonder who you're talking about.
Some kid from South Carolina who I think played at this basketball place called, I think it's called Duke.
Duke. Oh, Duke. Oh, yes. Oh, right. Of course. Yes, we will transition to Zion's impact in the NBA. I'm really quite shocked at just how good he is at this point. I immediately thought his game, or just basically just his whole style. I mean, he's a tremendous athlete, not a great shooter, not overall. I mean, some things about him, he's a little too big. That body just kind of worries me going forward.
Yeah,
but
the question is his future, right?
Right.
He's being dominant right now.
Right.
Not a lot of these guys have played against him before.
Right.
So the questions are, how will defenses shift to his abilities as people get more game tape on him and as they develop? And secondly, how is his body going to hold up and have to change in order to maintain a long career in this league?
Right. And I guess those are things that we'll find out in the future. But speaking of him right now, Tim, I really didn't expect this kid to be this good, especially considering the fact that he missed a majority of that first half of the season, I should say. And then you think of there's a transitional period. Okay, he's going to have to get into playing shape. They're not going to play him a lot of minutes. I remember watching his first game against San Antonio thinking, okay. And then he kind of just went off in the fourth quarter. And I'm like, he really hasn't slowed down since.
Exactly. He's good for 20 plus a night on a bad night.
Yeah. And it's just the way he gets to the basket. I mean, even I was watching the 2 Laker games. What was it, yesterday? Not yesterday, but was it Thursday night?
Thursday night, yeah.
Thursday night, and then there was one about a week and a half ago, and they had guys like Dwight Howard on him and AD, and he's going by them. LeBron didn't necessarily guard him, but just the fact that that footwork, he barely puts the ball on the floor. It's just he gets there with 3 steps. It's like, whoa, how?
Well, you also have to remember Dwight Howard and AD aren't exactly spring chickens anymore.
Well, AD,
they're both great players, but
AD is still, obviously a fantastic athlete. Dwight Howard's not what he once was. He's not. I think we all saw that in the dunk contest.
Yeah, exactly. My God, that was awesome.
But just the fact that just big bodies, long length. Because Zion is not like 6'10", he's 6'6".
Exactly.
But
he's just a big dude. He's an NFL tight end in an NBA player's body.
But the way he moves to the basket, the way he spins, the way obviously his incredible vertical leap, but just he is must see TV number one. But just I just find myself in amazement as far as like he gets the ball at the top of the key, and then within like just like a step or two, he's already getting to the basket over guys bigger than him.
So then let me ask this. I'll ask two questions here. The first question is, again, we're talking about the future of the NBA here, right? Because let's face it, this guy's probably going to be a great player for at least the next few years.
Oh, yeah.
Do NBA teams have to shift their strategy to where you have to have an inside guy, either to go against a guy like Zion or to create an opportunity like a guy like Zion has?
That's a good question. I think in certain circumstances, they would have to shift. But I think, obviously, certain teams have a specific defensive, alignment like they use. I think with a guy like Zion, we've never seen anything like him. So he reminds me of Barkley.
Yeah, not since like the Barkley's MVP era and Shaq's early years.
Yeah. Like he's probably the one guy you have to make an adjustment for because he just has this size and athleticism that you can't really teach or guard. So he's going to get to the basket pretty much against anybody. The most you could try to do, and which is hard in itself, is just try to turn him into a jump shooter. I mean, somehow just like try to clog the lane. That way he just can't. If you try to match him up with one guy, whether he's bigger or he's Zion's height, he just has too much athleticism. He'll get by him every single time.
Well, I mean, if he develops a jump shot, you have to remember, Zydrunas Ilgauskas on the Cavs, he built an entire career about making 15 to 17 footers, and he was 7 foot plus.
Yeah, but Zydrunas, he came into the league with that, didn't he?
He developed it as time went along.
Okay, I mean, and initially that's what Zion's gonna have to really focus on too, because that athleticism obviously won't last forever. So we'll see how he develops, but from what I've seen right now, and there is a small camp that's basically Zion should be Rookie of the Year.
And now it goes to my second question. By the time the regular season ends in April, who do you think Rookie of the Year is going to be? Is it going to be Ja Morant? Because he has played great for Memphis so far. He is the future of that franchise. But you still think it's Ja Morant, even if Zion keeps playing the way he does?
Ja Morant. Ja Morant has two things. A, he's played the entire season.
And he's played well the entire season.
B, he has his team in the 8th seed. This is a team that they thought was going to be another tanking ball club.
Exactly. They just lost Mike Conley.
Exactly. And we talk about Zion being spectacular. Ja Morant is just a freak of nature as well. I mean, two South Carolina boys. I'm like, wow.
And to think, he ended up at Murray State.
Murray State, is that in Ohio?
Kentucky.
Yeah.
They're in the Ohio Valley Conference, which is somewhat confusing. But
to be a Knicks fan.
well, that kind of leads us to the last thing we can spend a couple minutes on.
Right.
Of course, Ja Morant came from Murray State.
Right.
A coach back in the mid-2000s that came from Murray State, a guy by the name of Mick Cronin, came to my alma mater, the University of Cincinnati, which is very, very squarely on the bubble right now for maybe the best 3-week event in sports, the NCAA tournament.
Oh, yes. Yes. It is that time of the year, March Madness. I think it's a gambler's heaven. What do you think? Is it Super Bowl or March Madness?
Oh, March Madness.
March Madness for sure.
Well, it depends on what you're betting on. Like if you're betting on like the weird, like out there stuff, the Super Bowl's great for like national anthem length. Will the quarterback have certain number of yards, those sorts of things. If you're just betting like on basketball, like who's the first team going to be to 15, who's going to win, what kind of upset are we going to have? Yeah, it's the NCAA tournament.
It's just 3 weeks of just heaven for like just. If you're a degenerate gambler.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what time of year you look up room rates in Vegas for the third week of March. Just expect to pay an arm, a leg, and naming rights to your firstborn.
Okay. I mean, you brought up a good concept. So outside of the gambling aspect of it, I know we were talking about this a little bit earlier. This has probably been the most uneventful NCAA season I can remember. I mean, last year, if you take last year into account, we had Zion and Duke, and
I think that's a big part of it. It's just last year we had Duke and Zion was going through an injury after his shoe fell apart against Carolina, and we had a lot of the blue bloods playing well. This year, right? Carolina isn't even sniffing the CBI or the NIT level.
No, they're gonna shut out.
Duke will have a high seed,
a second seed.
Yeah. Kansas, they're probably the number one team in America right now.
Yeah, and they've been playing the best by far.
But you also have to remember, we have a lot of teams that you aren't used to seeing and that are kind of entering the mix. Like Baylor, they've been consistently a good program, but they've never been at the level of these other guys. Dayton out of the Atlantic 10.
Right.
San Diego State,
right,
after Steve Fisher retired. Of course, Gonzaga's always good, except they're playing better than they normally do.
Right.
But you don't see those normal teams you see at the top, the Michigan States, the Kentuckys. Even though Kentucky's playing decently.
Yeah.
But this year just kind of has the feel of literally anyone can win it.
Yeah, which is, I kind of think is exciting. But although you can never tell in March because every time you see, at least the last, decade, you see a team in the Final Four, it's never the favorites that gets it. I mean, you'll be lucky if you get 2 number 1 seeds in there. So I guess it's kind of setting up to be probably one of the more interesting March Madness events to come through. And I don't know.
I think there's a very good chance that you could see a traditional 1-bid league send a team to the Elite Eight.
Really?
Yeah, because if you think about it, right, it's so wide open. Everything's it's hard to determine who the good and mediocre teams are.
Right. And
a team could have a bad night.
Exactly. And that's exactly kind of what I was saying. Even the power, the blue bloods, they lose.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't get there every single year.
Exactly.
So
Duke lost to Mercer in 2015.
Exactly. And they lost to VCU one year in I guess 2007 or 2008. I mean, we don't see that. So the fact that we have kind of these, the quote unquote underdog teams or the teams that you just don't expect to be there that are the top 5 or in the top 5 is just wow, okay. Well, how is this going to work out? What's going to happen here? Okay. Are there teams that are not the power conferences or from the the original great team blue blood teams, are they gonna get knocked out by another team that's that's to be expected? But it's normally we don't see that. We normally have our surprises in the tournament of oh wow, how did this team knock this team off? Oh okay, it's just doesn't seem, or is it one of those things where it's gonna be, well, obviously not North Carolina, but let's say a team like Duke, who, they're still great. Not as great as they were in the past, but are they going to make this big Final Four run?
Exactly, and win it in a year that they necessarily shouldn't.
Right.
Which they've done a couple times.
When was the last time that happened?
2015?
That was Jaleel Okafor.
No, that was the year they won it over Wisconsin with Frank Kaminsky and Sam Decker, and then they knocked out Kentucky when 2015 Kentucky was supposed to be the best team of all time.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But again, that's all at the top. Here, you could have March drama come from literally anywhere in the field. You could have a 15 seed make the Sweet 16,
right?
Like we saw, I think, with FGCU back in 2013.
Right.
You could have a team that's in a play-in game make the Final Four, like we saw with VCU in 2011.
Right.
It's just so unpredictable this year because I think part of it is the fact that the major media companies haven't covered college basketball anywhere nearly as much this year.
Right.
Because of, the fact we don't have a major name like Zion, but also the fact that we've had 6 number 1 seeds lose, or number 1 teams in the rankings lose when they were number 1. So we really don't know who the great teams are.
Yeah, and again, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I mean,
no, it's going to make for a great March.
Oh yeah, especially when you consider, programs, the elite programs are going to go down. I mean, that's just a given every freaking March. But now they're not even in the forefront.
Exactly.
I want to see how far a team like San Diego State, which I'm actually kind of like, I'm intrigued by that. I want to see how interesting would it be a Final Four of Baylor, San Diego State, Creighton,
And Gonzaga.
And Gonzaga is the power of the group. That's the super team of the group.
Okay, first off, CBS network execs would probably be jumping off buildings in New York if that happened.
Yeah.
But me as a fan of basketball, I'm grabbing my popcorn.
Yeah, they always make for great games. I mean, this is one of the reasons. This is one of the seasons I actually look forward to the most. March Madness. Although I'm not quite as big of a college basketball fan as I used to be as a kid, just because of the one and dones and just things like that. And I get it.
Exactly. Guys staying around longer. There were bigger names, and quite frankly, the TV coverage was a little bit more skewed to developing those names.
Right. So but it's still, it's one of those things like, I'm not quite, but I still get sucked in.
Yeah.
I'm still going to watch.
Oh, yeah, I'm still watching.
And, so it'll be pretty exciting to see what transpires as far as the NCAA tournament. Obviously, we still have about 2 weeks, a week and a half before the announcement of the particular seeds, and then we have like 2 weeks of that, and then the Final Four and whatnot. But, it's certainly a lot of fun. It's been very interesting. I guess one more thing that we can squeeze in with about like less than 10 minutes that we have, the NFL, I should say the NFL Combine, but the upcoming draft of the NFL. Pretty much Joe Burrow's a lock.
Yeah, we know that's happening.
Going to the Bengals, although he has tiny hands and he's not very appreciative of that. I wonder why. It was just a certain stigma about tiny things. And
well, he can get himself an endorsement with Burger King if he wants.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Okay, let's get back on track. And we have a guy who many thought would have been the number 1 overall pick had he stayed healthy in Tua. How do you pronounce his last name?
Tagovailoa.
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 Tua, our guy Tua, who has been mocked as going as late as number 5 to the Dolphins, but as early as number 3 to the Detroit Lions. That's going to be interesting just to see who kind of like throws their cards on the deck, who just splashes, because he'd be perfect in Miami, and Miami, considering the needs that the Lions need. And who's the 4th team again? The Giants. My Giants, of course.
Yep.
Almost forgot.
You forgot you had the 4th pick.
Yeah, it's been that kind of year. I'm sure Dave Gettleman's going to find a way to fuck that job off completely. Sorry, tangent.
He will.
Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see if a certain team jumps ahead of the Giants with Detroit, just to kind of like, I guess what I'm trying to say, it's fun to see him play that hand, because Miami is probably sitting there thinking, oh, he's going to fall right to us because they don't need a quarterback and they don't need a quarterback. But another team might jump over, and you'll hear rumblings about that.
Well, you also have to remember, Gettleman's never traded back in the first round of a draft.
Oh, he said he would, though.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, he said a lot of things.
Yeah, but I guess I can't really take that man for his word. But if he's smart, he will. He will trade back. We'll get some more picks. Let's shore up that O-line. We'll see. But do you see Tua getting picked as high as 3 or staying at 5?
If he gets picked as high as 3, that means Detroit will have traded out of that pick.
Right. You think they do?
Yeah, because I think they can get a little bit more mileage out of Stafford.
Yeah, obviously. I think so, too. I don't think Matthew Stafford is this horrible quarterback. I mean...
No, he's never had any pieces around him, really, except for Calvin Johnson.
Exactly.
So, again, like, you're going to want to keep Stafford there, even if you're mentoring a new quarterback.
Exactly.
So, I don't think they're going to waste that kind of draft capital on somebody who does have the injury concerns that he does.
Pretty much. Yeah, I agree. But it is rumblings. We also have another quarterback that I want to touch on, and that is Mr. Jordan Love.
Pride of Utah State.
Utah State. Now, we're hearing the Mahomes comparison, which I think we're going to see a lot of those going forward.
Of course, we are. You have to see the way these kids are in these camps nowadays.
Exactly. But if you watch some footage of Jordan Love, you kind of see the arm angles, kind of Mahomes-esque.
You also have to remember he played in Logan, Utah, which has a really high elevation.
Right. Oh, well, I did not know that. But, I mean, he's got the kind of, he's got the physique, he's got the size, he's got the arm, that kind of playmaking ability. He's getting a lot of guys. He's that guy that's moving up in that draft.
Oh, yeah.
I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, he's getting picked in the first round for sure.
Yeah, but
for sure.
Depending, now, will he go ahead of Herbert?
Herbert?
Herbert.
It depends on what team's particular needs are and what kind of offense they fit into.
I guess we're just going to have to find out after the personal workouts and whatnot. But that's the name to follow. I mean, what do you think? I mean, I haven't really seen much footage of him. I've seen a little bit.
Herbert or Love?
Love.
Well, of course, Love played in the Mountain West Conference, so
right.
the caliber of defenses he's playing against isn't going to be the same as, what Tua or Herbert or Burrow would have went against.
Right.
But like I said, Love's got good mechanics. It translates well to an NFL offense. Has a good pocket presence. It's going to come down to
coaching.
It's going to come down to coaching. Yeah. Exactly. Like Mahomes had Andy Reid. Do you think Mahomes would have the career he has right now without Andy Reid?
Oh yeah, and it's that old question of Brett Favre. If Brett Favre would have stayed in Atlanta and not been traded to Green Bay with Mike Holmgren and Andy Reid and Steve Mariucci and this, would he have turned into Brett Favre? Everything comes down to coaching. I mean, there's not a lot of guys who've come into even a guy like Tom Brady. I mean, with that New England offense, that system, I should say.
Yeah.
You have to go to the right place, but I'm kind of intrigued by him. I guess I'm going to find out more and more about him as the offseason progresses. Herbert, what do you think of him?
Good big body, good arm.
Right.
He's really not that mobile.
Right.
But it depends on what he goes into. Like an offense like the Chargers, I think would fit him perfectly.
And I've been hearing that about the Chargers.
With two good running backs.
Right.
And Keenan Allen who can create separation.
Right. And he had a really good scouting combine. I mean, he threw the ball well. He's got the size. What is he, about 6'6"?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's obviously he's in that top three. I wouldn't be surprised if Love goes ahead of
that. Could happen.
That could happen. Teams fall in love real quick. But
you have to remember 2017. Did anyone think Mahomes was going ahead of Deshaun Watson?
No. Oh no. I mean, it's I didn't see that happening. And obviously, the Chiefs kind of realized. I guess they realized somebody was looking to maybe they had some interest in Mahomes, so they decided to just jump above him. But
because the Bills needed a quarterback too. The Bills were right after.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that play out. But obviously, the biggest obvious thing is Burrow will go number one. And what do you think of his future?
I think Cincinnati needs to get a really, really good coaching staff if he's going to be successful where he is, because he's in a tough division. Right. Pittsburgh, even when they're bad, they're decent.
Right.
Baltimore they played lights out at the end of last year.
Right.
And Cleveland is. Now, granted, this is coming from a place of bias here, so I'm going to talk Cleveland up.
Right.
But Cleveland has a lot of good pieces, and if they can get good coaching behind them, they play them twice a year, so there's always that to worry about. So year one is going to be tough for Joe Burrow, no matter what happens.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah, as it is for most.
Yeah, because they need a lot of things on that team, right?
The thing about Joe Burrow, I like his size. I mean, he has all the physical attributes.
Except his hands.
Except his hands. Unless you have girlish Dante Culpepper hands who just fumbles. I don't know if you remember. He just had he was just a fumbler. You could literally just not even hit the ball, just swipe it into the air would knock it out.
And he had Randy Moss as a receiver.
And he had Randy Moss. And then, he had Chris Carter too. But the thing about Burrow is obviously he had probably the greatest college football season any quarterback's ever had. Is he more system, or was he Is because he's one of those 1 year wonder guys.
That remains to be seen because I think a lot of that was Joe Brady.
Exactly.
Who worked with New
Who's
Orleans.
in Carolina now?
Who's in Carolina now.
Right.
Worked with New Orleans, came to LSU. And again, Carolina's not really looking at doing anything, too flashy in the next year or so. So we're not going to know on Joe Brady for a while.
Okay.
Because Matt Rule has a 7-year contract. He can kind of play with things as he needs to. And with Burrow, I think he has the capability to be a good NFL quarterback.
Right.
It all comes down to who's surrounding him.
Exactly. And, I mean, having A.J. Green won't be that bad.
Well, assuming he's healthy.
Yeah, he has Joe Mixon behind him as well.
And I think Joe Mixon's
They have their first round pick from last year, who's a guard, I believe, from Alabama, who's
what was
missed
his
the whole
name?
year. I forgot his name too. But that should
Brent something.
That should be some kind of an upgrade. I'm interested to see just how, again, his talent, and he has talent, but it doesn't blow you out of the water. It doesn't it's not like he has a just dynamic, just laser arm, but it's good enough. His accuracy is good. He has great, pocket awareness.
You also have to remember LSU gave him a ton of time to throw.
Exactly. But from what I saw, his pocket awareness was really good. I guess it's like we said, it's all going to come down to coaching because that's really what it is at the end of any story, any quarterback that we've ever seen. Joe Montana, Johnny Unitas, it all comes down to coaching. But with that said, that's going to be something to look forward to as far as that. So on this particular podcast, we were able to cover the NFL QB carousel.
We got a baseball scandal in there.
Baseball, we had to talk a little bit of Zion and then the NCAA tournament, and then we even were managed to squeeze through the NFL draft as far as the QBs.
Yeah, who said February and March wasn't an interesting time of year?
Exactly. With that being said, my name is Reggie Bobrin. I am with my co-host, Tim Reggie.
Reggie. No one knows how to pronounce it correctly. That's why I go by Regis.
I like Reggie better. You are listening to the Reggie N Regis Podcast. We thank you for listening to us. You can subscribe in the future if not.
Twitter handle is at Reggie N Regis Pod. That is REGGIE, the letter N, REGIS Pod. We'll have the other socials up here soon, and then we will be back for episode 2 whenever that happens.
And also, to our email is the same thing, ReggieNRegis@gmail.com. Is it Gmail?
It's Reggie N Regis Podcast at gmail.com.
And he's the guy that obviously takes care of that. Reggie N Regis Podcast at gmail.com. Please feel free to hit us up. Let us know what you think of the show. Like anything that you want to talk about personally, we'll even read some of your emails on our podcast.
And this is only episode 1. Like, if you guys give us some good ideas, we can take that ball and run with it.
You can also send some funny stuff. We'll, even if it's bad, we'll still read it. Why not? We're all about having fun. We're just two normal guys. With that being said, again, we do thank you for joining us. We will let you know when we'll be dropping that next one.
March 22nd, unless we come up with a better idea in between now and then.
All right, so there you go. So we will be putting up episode 2, hopefully sometime by the end of the month. With that being said, we are out. Do we have an out?
We didn't think of an out.
We had to think of an out. You know what?
Hey, if you guys want to suggest an out, give us an idea.
Yeah, okay. With that being said, thank you again for listening. Again, have a wonderful rest of
your weekend.
Weekend.